5 bikers made the most deadly mistake of their life in Redrock Hollow, a town covered in dust. They had no idea that their vicious taunts would bring back a legend they believed to be long dead, the notorious Stillwater Kid, or that the calm bartender who was carefully washing glasses had more confirmed kills than their entire gang combined. A man who was so deeply dreaded that federal officials continue to whisper his name in bureau offices 7 years after he vanished. A brief silence before we go on. Please let us know where you are watching from. Make sure to hit subscribe if you're liking these stories, since tomorrow's episode is going to be incredible. Dust particles danced in the amber light as the late afternoon sun's long shadows passed through the Lucky Strike Saloon's windows. Behind the ancient oak bar, Thomas Holloway moved with experienced accuracy, his rough hands soft on the fragile glassware. He had learned patience from serving beverages for 7 years. Like everything else about the man, every movement was deliberate and measured. Local news reported another heat wave sweeping over the Arizona desert, the wall-mounted TV whispered. The building's ancient bones seemed to absorb the oppressive heat, which was barely cooled by a ceiling fan that whirred languidly overhead. Tom's gaze briefly strayed to the security camera feed that was concealed beneath the bar, a long-standing habit he had never been able to overcome. Looking up from her laptop, where she had been calculating the day's data, Martha Williams examined her long-standing colleague with a mix of interest and worry. "Tom, 7 years. Have you ever considered going on vacation?" He gave her one of his infrequent, hardly noticeable smiles that never quite made it to his eyes as she asked the inquiry. "Miss Martha, I wouldn't know what to do with myself." People leaned closer to hear his voice because it was measured and quiet. Additionally, it was the type of voice that made them underestimate him, which was exactly what Tom needed. It was a peaceful afternoon in the saloon, with Doc Miller reading something on his tablet at his usual table and old Henry Cooper sipping his usual whiskey in the corner. Every now and then the doctor looked up, his eyes locking with Tom's in that mutually shrewd gaze. Doc Miller was the only person in Redrock Hollow who understood why those hands, now so cautious with fragile glassware, had once been dreaded by every government department that had an acronym. Deputy Will Tucker was doing his routine rounds when a police car rolled past the windows. Tom nodded in response to the young officer's greeting, his actions always in time. Rick's delivery truck near the diner, Mrs. Patterson's vintage Buick outside the drugstore, and an unknown black SUV with tinted windows idling at the far end of the block were the other 3 cars visible on the video stream. Martha said, "We're getting some new people in town," as she followed Tom's eyes to the street. It could be beneficial for business. For a brief period, Tom's hand motionless on the glass he was polishing. "Maybe," he said quietly, but his eyes had adopted that aloof expression Martha had grown accustomed to seeing over the years. Every time the wind shifted and trouble rode in on its back, he received the same expression. Tom noticed that the wall-mounted TV had changed to breaking news. A reporter with a somber countenance stood outside the sheriff's office in Rattlesnake Junction. This month, there have been 3 such incidents. Although sources close to the investigation indicate Doc Miller put down his tablet, his old face wrinkled with anxiety, Sheriff Monroe declined to comment on whether the Red Dust Gang was involved in the robbery. "I assumed that they often stayed close to the freeway in the north." "Times change, Doc," Tom said, his voice heavy enough to cause Martha to glance up. Only once, 2 years earlier, when the drug dealers attempted to establish themselves in the city, had she heard that tone. They had left quickly. Like a living creature, the afternoon heat pressed against the windows, warping the vista of Main Street into shaky shadows and lines. As he reached under the bar to check inventory, Tom's fingers accidentally touched the cabinet's fake bottom, where outdated insurance policies and habits were waiting. Too faint for most to discern, a distant rumbling of motorcycles reverberated from someplace outside the municipal boundaries. However, Tom saw it all. The instincts that had sustained him over 20 years of service to his nation had not been dulled by 7 years of peace. Martha scowled at the screen of her laptop before turning to face Tom. "Last night, the highway patrol reported a disturbance of some sort up near Carson's Point. Lots of motorcycles, possibly some gunshots. Most likely simply children playing about. With his gaze fixed on the roadway where the black SUV had finally moved away, Tom whispered softly, "Not kids. Carson spends little time with children. Are you aware of the Red Dust Gang?" Martha's voice was colored with astonishment as she asked. "Tom has not appeared in 7 years." Tom's lips briefly met the ghost of a smile that vanished as fast as Martha could have guessed. "Miss Martha, you know a lot of stuff. Being able to spot danger before it orders its first drink is part of being a good bartender." Doc Miller up and carefully gathered his belongings. With a new type of weight, he replied, "You might want to check our medical supplies. Being ready never hurts." Tom gave a very faint nod that was hardly noticeable. Even though the motorbike rumble was still far away, it was growing louder and louder like thunder. Martha observed Tom's deliberate and slow movements as he started transferring bottles from the top shelf to the area beneath the bar. She asked, attempting to sound lighthearted despite the tension that had started to build up in the air, "Are you expecting rain?" "Something like that," Tom said, and for a brief instant, the cautious exterior of the silent bartender gave way to something more substantial underneath, something forged out of steel and darkness. "You might want to give Will a call and let him know that we could spend some time outside in a patrol car." The desert sky was painted in tones of gold and crimson as the sun made its gradual journey toward the horizon. The rumble of motorbikes in the distance increased steadily, bringing with it memories of a past that Tom Holloway had assumed was long gone. Old ghosts were emerging from the dust of memory to replace the 7 years of tranquility that were coming to an end. Their intent was as lethal as any gunshot, and their fingers curled around throttles rather than triggers. 5 custom Harley-Davidsons in formation pulled up outside the Lucky Strike Tavern, a thunderous sound that signaled the approach of the Red Dust Gang. Expensive motorcycles that were altered for speed and display, their chrome shone in the last of the sunlight. Marcus Blood Carson, the lead rider, deliberately slowed down his engine to kill it, making the abrupt silence even more menacing than the previous cacophony. While Tom's eyes catalogued every feature through the front windows, his hands continued their systematic work behind the bar. 5 armed bikers with visible handguns on their hip holsters and perhaps more concealed weapons. Leather combat boots with patches designating rank and region. Their actions demonstrated poor military training, they were not weekend warriors acting like outlaws. Will Tucker's number was already dialed as Martha's fingers lingered over her phone. Tom shook his head in a barely noticeable way. "Not yet," he muttered. "Before we invite more, let's examine what type of difficulty they're causing." With Carson leading the way with Frank Bones, Wilson, and Jake Grave and Thompson at his sides, the group entered with well-practiced cooperation. Charlie Blade Davis, the youngest, stalked the perimeter, while Luke Razor Reed stood close to the entryway. With a rhythm like to distant cannon, their boots reverberated on the hardwood floor. Now, there was a trace of an academic background gone to seed in Carson's speech. "This is charming, isn't it? Like a scene from an old western." He rubbed a finger across the surface of the bar, looking for dust, but there was none. "At least someone is proud of what they do." Tom moved slowly as he put down the glass he had been polishing. "Gentlemen, what can I get you?" Bones, Wilson, and Gentleman laughed, and it sounded like glass shattering. "Can you hear the blood?" He referred to us as gentlemen. With icy eyes, Carson observed Tom, noting the bartender's cautious posture, the way he held his right hand free, and the calculated distance he kept. "Your finest whiskey," he said, lowering himself into a bar stool. "Don't touch the bottle." Deputy Tucker's cruiser made another pass, slower this time, according to the surveillance footage beneath the bar. With his hand now lying close to his medical bag, Doc Miller stayed in his corner, seemingly engrossed on his tablet. With his desert-honed survival instincts taking over, old Henry Cooper had become motionless. Tom's motions were fluid and purposeful as he reached for a bottle of Blanton's. He sensed that 5 sets of eyes were on him, waiting for any indication of resistance or fear. He didn't give them either. "Do you guys intend to stay or are you just traveling through?" Tom asked as he carefully positioned the glasses. "Depends," Carson said, examining his image in the gleaming bar top. "How is the hospitality in the area?" As he poured measures of amber liquor, Tom muttered, "People here mind their own business. As long as others follow suit." Blade chuckled uneasily, scarcely out of his 20s. He imitated, his hand veering toward his hip, "As long as they followed suit." "Old man, is that some sort of warning?" Tom answered, his voice level, simply giving the facts. However, the young biker's hand froze halfway to his weapon due to something in his tone. Carson's eyes squinted a bit. "For a basic bartender, you appear to know a lot about how things operate around here." Tom shrugged and went back to polishing his unending glass. Man learns things. He was still able to reach anything behind the bar, but the movement kept his hands exposed. Grave Thompson slammed his glass down so forcefully that alcohol splattered on the gleaming wood. "Man does learn, doesn't he?" He pushed his jacket back just enough to show a pistol grip as his hand fell to his belt. "Do you know anything about this?" Without looking up, Tom answered, "That's a good way to get yourself hurt." Everyone in the group chuckled, with the exception of Carson, who was watching Tom with increasing curiosity. "Barkeep, do you have a name?" "Just Tom." Carson gently repeated, rolling the words around as if tasting them, "Just Tom. Just Tom, you know what I think." Slowly and purposefully, he reached inside his cut. He took out a folded piece of paper and spread it on the bar with theatrical care, saying, "I think you're lying to me. Furthermore, I dislike being misled." At last, Tom raised his head, studying the picture with a neutral expression. It featured a younger him standing with a military unit while wearing tactical gear. His face was sufficiently visible despite the redaction of the majority of the picture. Tom muttered, "7 years is a long time. Man evolves." Carson grinned broadly. "Not very much." With a gesture, his soldiers dispersed farther and positioned themselves strategically throughout the tavern. "Just Tom, the thing about tiny places. It's easy for secrets to leak. Particularly when you know how or who to ask." Tom shook his head slightly, and Martha started to head back toward the phone. There was a sense of impending violence in the air, and the tension in the room had increased significantly. "Anything you're searching for?" Tom responded cautiously. "It is not found here." "No." Carson lowered his voice to a near whisper as he leaned forward. "Because the man they used to refer to as the Stillwater Kid is the one I'm searching for. After that disaster in Paraguay 7 years ago, the agent went missing. Before they chose to work for the government, the ghost who educated half of the special operators in this chamber didn't pay them enough." Tom's hands were no longer moving interminably, but his voice was steady. "Long ago, that man passed away. See, you're mistaken there." Carson's grin became rapacious. "We're going to have a lengthy and fascinating discussion about some of the items he took with him when he vanished, as I've spent a lot of time and money trying to find that man. It took us a long time to prepare and tell this story, so please subscribe to our channel if you find it entertaining, it means a lot to us. Let's return to the narrative." Finally, the sun had gone down, and the saloon was in the encroaching twilight. The desert wind became stronger outside, alerting the streets with its whistling. Old instincts awoke in the deepening darkness, training and muscle memory rising like smoke from dormant coals. Tom murmured gently, "Last chance," with a weight to his voice that had not been there before. "Find another town to cause trouble, take your soldiers, and ride off." Carson rose slowly, and his men moved forward, their hands close to their rifles. "Or is it only Tom? Will you serve us until the end?" When the response finally arrived, each silent word conveyed decades of experience. "Or I'll demonstrate why some legends are better off being forgotten." 3 additional bikes were seen pulling up outside, with their riders occupying positions at either end of the street, according to the surveillance camera beneath the pub. The backup for Carson arrived on time. This was what Tom had anticipated. Blood Carson was one of those men who always had something to offer. "What's humorous, do you?" Almost delicately, Carson traced the rim of his glass with one finger. "Most folks assumed I was chasing a ghost story, a boogeyman the agency created to frighten cartels straight, when I first started seeking for the Stillwater Kid." He fixed his gaze on Tom's. "However, Paraguay. It was real enough, Paraguay." Like smoke from a rifle, the name hung in the air. Martha noticed the first fissure in Tom's meticulously cultivated facade as his shoulders tensed almost imperceptibly. Tom answered, his voice calm under the weight of ancient recollections, "That was a long time ago. It's best to stop there." There was no humor in Carson's laugh. "Don't you leave it there. As if those hard drives were left there. As if you left Martinez, our mutual friend, there." He lowered his voice and leaned forward. "Or rather, what remained of Martinez?" Although Tom's hands had ceased their ceaseless movement, his posture changed a little. Martha saw the shift. Just before breaking up the occasional bar brawl, he stood in the same manner, his calm concealing a predator's ready. "You guys better get out while you can," Tom remarked softly. Grave Thompson pushed his jacket aside with a hand that fell to his hip. "Old man, or what?" "You'll..." The subsequent action was so quick it seemed unthinkable. With surgical precision, Tom's hand swept up, grabbed Thompson's wrist, and slammed it against the bar. The biker screamed in agony as his pistol, half drawn, clattered to the ground. Tom was liquid slick in his movements and had already stepped aside as Carson's men went for firearms. "That was a warning," he replied in the same tone. "It won't be the next time." Carson halted his men with a crisp command, "Stand down." He never took his eyes from Tom's face. "Amazing. Being a bartender for 7 years hasn't slowed you down." Martha's voice broke the tension. "Enough. Move your company to another location. This is a reputable business." With a ruthless grin, Carson turned to face her. "Reputable? One of the most dangerous individuals in the Southwest has been in your care, lady. The stuff Uncle Sam received from your quiet bartender." He gave a low whistle. "They would do your hair a curl." Tom cut me off, saying that what I did was to protect people. "What do you do?" His eyes became stony. "It's only for financial gain." Deputy Tucker's cruiser was once again coming, this time with lights on, according to the security footage. Carson's smile widened as he took note. "Just Tom, your local law is becoming suspicious. You may want to consider the number of civilians you are willing to sacrifice." Once more. The final word struck like a blow to the body. Something sparked in Tom's eyes, but his face remained unchanged. Almost healed, an old soreness. "Doctor?" Tom never took his eyes off Carson as he called gently. "Henry and Martha should go out back. Right now. No one is leaving." With his hand inside his cut, Razor Reed moved toward the back exit. "Until we receive what we came for, that is." With a weight that caused even Carson's smile to falter, Tom's voice lowered. "I'm asking politely the last time. Let them go." After examining him for a while, Carson gave him a small nod. "Release the civilians. This is between the ghost and us." Doc Miller took the lead and led Henry Cooper to the rear entrance. Martha shook her head and refused to back down. "I'm not, please, Miss Martha, Tom." Tom's tone softened a bit. "While I take care of things, don't worry about your safety." Martha paused at the way he phrased it, not whether he could manage it, but how. She saw something very different when she looked at her quiet bartender of 7 years. A man who had dealt with this type of issue all his life. Carson's phone buzzed as Martha finally let Doc take her outside. His smile came back as he checked it. Exactly on schedule. We found what we're looking for, Team 2. That Rattlesnake Junction storage facility. The one that was rented out as Thomas Stevens. He relished the moment when Tom's eyes flashed with recognition. Poor craftsmanship. Leaving a trail of paper. You've truly softened. With his fingers extended wide, Tom's hand moved to the top of the bar. It's not what you believe that unit contains. No. Carson's brows went up. Are the Paraguayan hard drives missing? The ones with enough dirt to take down half of the Southwest's private military contractors. His tone became stern. The ones that killed Martinez? Martinez killed himself. The same way you're about to, Tom said bluntly. Despite the looming threat, Carson simply laughed. Big remarks from a man who has spent 7 years cowering behind a bar. Come on, Ghost. You are outgunned, outnumbered, and lack practice. In my opinion, you have 2 options. Provide us with the passcode for those drives, or watch as we destroy this charming small hamlet in our search for them. There are now at least 10 bikes arriving, according to the security feed. Locals had sensed trouble and cleared off, leaving the street empty. At the crossroads, Deputy Tucker's cruiser came to a stop and requested assistance. Tom's hands were calm as he reached under the bar, but he took out his phone rather than a weapon. You're correct on one point, he remarked softly. I've softened. On the bar, he placed the phone. 7 years of watching people, serving drinks, and hearing stories. His gaze locked with Carson's. Discovering all there is to know about them. Is that meant to frighten us? Blade Davis chuckled uneasily. No, said Tom. But this ought to. He rotated the phone so that the screen was visible. A live stream from several cameras located across the town, which provides clear views of Carson's reinforcements. Building a security network that would make the cartels envious took 7 years. It took 7 years to prepare for this day. At last, Carson's smile faltered. You're playing a bluff. Am I? Over the screen, Tom's finger lingered. Every federal department interested in the Red Dust Gang, including some of my old pals who would be thrilled to hear that you're still alive, receives this feed with just one call. His tone became softer. The people who believed you passed away in Paraguay. Sharp enough to cut, the tension in the room crystallized. Their leader's visage had turned to stone, but Carson's soldiers exchanged doubtful looks. It appears that the ghost still has teeth, Carson remarked quietly. I would like to know whether you are truly willing to make that call. Reduce that level of heat. Because once you do, all the reasons you disappeared and the secrets you've been harboring also come to light. Above the screen, Tom's finger stayed steady. Outside, sirens sounded in the distance as the desert wind grew stronger. The saloon was now in deeper shadow as the sun had completely set. 2 men who had served under the same flag looked down at one another in the growing darkness. One who breached his oath for financial gain, and one who had kept it. Everything would alter with the next decision. For one more pulse, Tom's finger lingered over the phone's screen. Then he carefully put it down. Carson, you're correct on one point. I've softened. He spoke in a calm, measured tone. Regained concern for people. I began to believe that the past could be forgotten. With a live video from Rattlesnake Junction displayed on his own phone, Carson responded, the past has a way of digging itself up. Similar to how my lads are currently unearthing those hard drives. 2 streets away, Sheriff Davidson's SUV was seen approaching with its lights off on the video camera beneath the pub. Wise guy, Tom thought. Tactical placement had always made sense to Robert. Those drives are 7 years old, Tom stated softly. You won't get what you want from them, regardless of what you believe. Carson's chuckle was as jagged as glass. The names of all the people who worked on Project Stillwater, the locations of all the black sites from here to Colombia, and the evidence that certain government contractors were playing both sides. In the faint light, his eyes gleamed. Ghost, that kind of information never goes out. It simply increases in value. Tom's weight had moved almost imperceptibly, but his hands were still flat on the bar. Carson, you were there. You witnessed Martinez's use of intelligence in that way. He sold them off. How many decent operators perished? Carson shrugged and said, casualties of war, but his face flashed. In addition, from what I understand, you personally made sure Martinez paid for his transgressions. There was additional movement outside, according to the security feed. Civilians were kept at bay by the cordon that Deputy Tucker had set up. Doc Miller's vehicle was leaving, probably transporting Martha and Henry to a safer location. However, 3 more bikes had arrived, increasing Carson's army to 13. Last chance, Tom muttered. Leave. What follows is not worth whatever you believe those urges are worth. Young and foolish, Blade Davis laughed uneasily. What follows? Old man, there are 13 of us, and 1 of you. What do you think specifically? Tom moved too quickly to follow, his movements fluid. He reached under the bar with his hands and produced something that gleamed in the low light. It's a tiny remote control, not a weapon. The saloon was completely darkened by the touch of a button. A symphony of precision brutality unfolded over the next 10 seconds. Like the ghost for whom he was named, Tom moved in the shadows. Before they could clear leather, the first 2 bikers were killed by precise blows to nerve clusters, which caused them to fall silently. Blade drew, his rifle catching the dim light from outside, but Tom was already on the move, pushing the younger man's arm up. Tom's elbow reached the ideal spot behind Blade's ear, and the shot ripped through the ceiling. Through the confusion came Carson's voice. Light him up. His second surprise, however, came while Tom was already behind the bar. When the sprinkler system came on, the air was filled with industrial-grade pepper spray rather than water. After 7 years of planning, more than merely camera systems were the result. Tom watched the bikers stumble, coughing and swearing, through his protective contacts, another preparation for exactly such a moment. They attempted to maintain firing discipline, demonstrating their military expertise, but the tavern was a complete mess due to the pepper spray. Ghost. Over the commotion, Carson's tense yet composed voice could be heard. Are you serious about doing this? Take a chance on everything you've created here. Tom's voice sounded as though it were coming from nowhere and everywhere. Carson, you brought this battle to my house. You are responsible for anything follows. Sheriff Davidson's voice echoed from a loudspeaker outside. This is the police. The structure is encircled. Raise your hands and come out. Carson's chuckle became unpleasant. Ghost, the cavalry is here. When my boys outside start firing, how many people do you think will be caught in the crossfire? Tom's third surprise was triggered by his response. All the lights in the bar came on at once, blinding anyone not wearing safety glasses for a second. Tom moved in that moment. Grave Thompson, who was still partially blind and having trouble using his weapon, was his first target. A sharp blow to the solar plexus caused the larger man to fold like damp cardboard. Tom was already in motion when Razor Reed fired a shot, the bullet bouncing off the bar where he had been just a heartbeat earlier. 7 years. As Tom used a joint lock that would have pleased his former fighting teachers to immobilize Reed, his speech could be heard clearly. I've been keeping this place up for 7 years. Constructed a clean object. Something truthful. With his tactical glasses shielding him from some of the pepper spray, Carson followed Tom's movements with his gun but was unable to get a clear shot. Based on falsehoods. Designed to flee. No, Tom said, vanishing like vapor into the tumult. Based on personal preference. Based on change. Another motorcyclist fell, his weaponry splattering on the ground. You never understood it. The phone of Carson crackled. "We have the drives, boss, but something is wrong." The static was broken by Tom's voice. "I'm going to assume they're worthless and corrupt." He moved with the fluid grace of a man half his age, emerging from the chemical cloud like a vengeful spirit. "Did you truly believe that I would leave confidential information unattended for 7 years?" Anger twisted Carson's face. "Murder him. Now murder him." However, Tom had kept his most shocking revelation until last. All of the building's electronic equipment died at once as the surviving bikers raised their firearms, prepared to make the saloon a free-fire zone. Digital watch screens, tactical radios, and phones all went dark. Tom's voice held a weight of utter conviction in the abrupt hush. EMP exploded. Restricted range. Localized impact. I also learned something more from our previous profession. His form appeared between Carson and the door, seemingly emerging from the thin chemical fog. "You can't be heard by your reinforcements outside. You cannot be warned by your storage unit personnel. Now it's just us." Sweat had started to form beads on Carson's brow, but his gun remained steady. "Ghost, you've got everything worked out. However, you overlooked something." He grinned viciously. "You'd have this house wired, I knew. I knew you would have backup plans. I sent a second crew to Rattlesnake Junction for that reason. Not for the drives." He took a moment to appreciate it. "For her." For a moment, Tom lost his carefully cultivated composure. "Who?" "That's Martinez's daughter," Carson said quietly. "The one you said you would keep safe. For 7 years, you have been sending money to this person." He squeezed the trigger with his finger. "The one who will soon discover the precise circumstances surrounding her father's death in Paraguay." Something lethal formed from the tension in the room. Law enforcement was mobilizing outside. A moment of perfect understanding, however, was locked between two guys inside the Lucky Strike saloon. One had come to unearth his violent history, no matter the cost, while the other had attempted to bury it. And Thomas Holloway made his decision in the intervals between heartbeats. Tom felt the name strike him like a blow to the body. Martinez, Sophia. 17 years old. Student of honor. The final pledge he made before leaving his previous life. Even from a distance, he had never ceased protecting this one individual. "You're lying," Tom muttered. But there was a terrible glitter in his eyes. They had the same glance before everything went wrong in Paraguay. Carson grinned broadly. "Am I? Look at your phone. Oh, hold on." He pointed to the shadows where their gadgets had died. "I suppose your EMP trick is reciprocal. Now there's no way to warn her." The voice of Sheriff Davidson crackled through a bullhorn once more outside. "This is the last warning you will receive. The building is encircled." Carson taunted, "Ghost, tick-tock. Before my boys get to Sophia's school, she has roughly 20 minutes. Thursdays are late for advanced placement classes, aren't they?" Tom gripped the remote control more tightly. White knuckles. Peace for 7 years. Of meticulously upheld control, weighed against the life of a single adolescent. It was easy math. It wasn't expensive. "What's humorous, do you?" Carson went on, obviously having fun. "I was baffled for 7 years as to why the well-known Stillwater child would simply vanish. Why would someone with your level of expertise decide to pour drinks in a desert?" His eyes gleamed. The money trail was then discovered. Recurring contributions to an Arizona private school. Angel of protection watching over Martinez's child. Don't include her in this. Even Carson's hardened soldiers shifted uneasily at the warning in Tom's voice. "She has no knowledge." "No," Carson's eyebrows went up. "She has no idea how her father actually passed away. Is unaware that the man who killed him provides her with a monthly scholarship. The full scope of the damage was becoming apparent as the pepper spray settled. 5 of Carson's guys were on the ground, moaning or asleep. The other 3 had dispersed. Tom's position was used to train the weapons. Outside, the scene was dotted with alternating red and blue patterns as police lights strode against the windows. "What are you looking for?" Even though he already knew the answer, Tom inquired. "Easy," Carson said. "The actual motivations. The ones who have evidence of the actual events in Paraguay. Who actually sold out those operators, according to those." He grinned ruthlessly. "The ones that show there were other traders besides Martinez." Tom's thoughts whirled through possibilities, figuring out angles and odds. They had gained solitude thanks to the EMP, but it also prevented him from alerting Sophia because it shut off his surveillance network. Carefully, he stated, "They wouldn't give you what you want, even if I had those drives." "No." On his trigger, Carson's finger grew a little tighter. "Because I want to make the great Stillwater youngster make a decision right now. Those drives. Or the daughter of Martinez. Your trade secrets. Or her life." The voice of Sheriff Davidson returned, this time closer. "Tom. Are you still alive?" "Answer him," Carson said. "Assure him that everything is all right. Give us a little time to talk about terms." When Tom answered, there was nothing in his voice. "Robert, you're still here. Contained situations." "Like hell it is," said Davidson. "There have been rumors of armed guys all over the town. Do you want to explain the true situation?" Carson pointed with his handgun. "Tell him to leave it alone or Sophia will suffer the consequences." However, Tom had already made up his mind and was on the go. His last contingency was activated when the remote in his palm clicked again. The saloon was filled with bright fluorescent glare when emergency lights, operating on different circuits, came on. "Robert?" Tom yelled, his voice now clearly authoritative. "Several hostiles are on their way to Copper Valley High School. The objective is Sophia Martinez. Get units there right away." Anger twisted Carson's face. "Murder him." The violence that followed was a haze. With 3 weapons exploding and bullets bouncing off the bar where he had been standing, Tom dove. He had previously drawn the weapon he prayed he would never use again as part of his duty behind an overturned table. A little Glock in a holster at the ankle. 7 years. The shooting was broken by Tom's voice. "I've fulfilled my commitment. Protected her. Shielded her from what the truth would do to individuals like you." Half the room was in shadow after his initial shot knocked out one of the overhead lights. "Carson, you should have kept running. I should have avoided my house." Now there was a hint of wildness in Carson's laugh. "Your house? Ghost, this isn't your home. Playing bartender while better guys perished with your secrets is where you've been hiding. Better men." One of the surviving bikers was spun into a table by Tom's second shot, which struck him in the shoulder. "Similar to Martinez? The guy who made money by selling out his own unit?" A symptom was Martinez. Carson shot aimlessly toward the darkness where Tom's voice had originated. The entire system was dishonest. We just discovered a way to make money off of it. These days, Tom's voice appeared to emanate from all directions. In the shadows he'd cast, a ghost. How many people perished for your game? Because you couldn't make ends meet on a government income, how many good operators were burned? Outside, police units raced toward the school as engines screamed to life. However, Carson merely grinned. Ghost, it's too late. My boys have already arrived. What will it be, then? The girl or the drives? 3 quick bullets that were so close together that they sounded like a single report were Tom's reaction. The saloon was nearly completely dark once the remaining overhead lights exploded. His voice conveyed a finality that caused even Carson's hardened troops to stop in the ensuing turmoil. Option 3 is what I go with. Violence erupted and was restrained by the darkness. Tom moved with the economy and lethality of a liquid shadow. Before they could follow him, 2 more bikers were killed. Carson fired again and again, but all he hit were ghosts and air. Tom's voice now came from behind the bar, "Carson. The problem with choices is that occasionally the best option isn't listed. Somewhere in the shadows, a bottle broke. There are moments when you have to forge your own route. There's no third option," cried Carson. His voice was filled with frustration. "The girl or the drives? Decide." "False." Now Tom's voice was nearer, almost personal. "I decide to complete the task I began in Paraguay. Decide to put a stop to this once and for all." The revolver in Carson's hand clicked out. Tom's voice held the weight of utter confidence amid the abrupt hush. "You overlooked the most crucial detail regarding Carson, the Stillwater child. Are you curious as to what it is? What's that ghost?" Carson growled as he struggled in the dark to reload. "I didn't ever need a backup plan," Tom said quietly. "Since strategy A was always successful." Red light flooded the room as the emergency exit door exploded open. Thomas Holloway at last demonstrated why certain legends are better left alone as Carson turned to confront the new danger. Tom's advance was captured in a succession of lethal photographs by the red emergency light, which strobe caught his movements. Carson was able to jam a new magazine into his pistol, but Tom was already past his defenses, rerouting the weapon with one hand while striking Carson's throat with the other. Tom whispered, "You were there in Paraguay," as Carson stumbled back, gasping. "You witnessed Martinez's attempt to flee." His hand sprang out, locking the joint of Carson's rifle arm. Seen what transpired when he threatened the lives of innocent people. When Carson's arm bowed at an odd angle, the weapon clattered to the ground. The gang boss, however, managed to smile bloodily despite the pain. "As if you witnessed Sarah's fate?" Tom hesitated for a split second as the name struck him like a physical blow. Carson pulled a concealed blade from his boot and utilized it, forcing his knee up. As Tom slid with the blow, the knife cut a small line of fire across his ribs. Indeed, Carson exerted his advantage, his blade creating patterns in the crimson shadows. "I completed my study on Ghost and learned everything there was to know about the wife who died because he believed he could leave life behind and the true reason why the well-known Stillwater Kid vanished." Despite his hand pressing against his bleeding side, Tom's voice stayed firm. "Just as you are doing now, people like you brought violence to my door, which is why Sarah died. Do people like me?" The sound of Carson's laughter reverberated off the walls. "Ghost, I was doing as I was told. Similar to you. The distinction is that I discovered the game was rigged. Martinez simply made it more apparent to me." Outside, units raced toward the school as sirens sounded. Tom's thinking computed timing and distances. Sophia was about to leave AP Chemistry and make her way to her car in the student parking lot. "At risk," Tom remarked, adjusting his weight a little, "you still don't get it. You didn't see anything from Martinez. Like everyone else, he took advantage of you." "Taken advantage of me?" Tom drifted back, and Carson's knife met empty air. He revealed the truth to me, demonstrating how the agencies were profiting from both sides while men like us suffered. With every phrase, his voice grew louder. The alphabet agencies, contractors, and cartels were all in collusion. Martinez also had evidence. No, it was Tom who spoke from the darkness. Martinez had bits and pieces of information that he misrepresented to support his treachery. To persuade folks like you that it was profitable to commit treason. Frustrated, Carson slashed his neck. "The drives will demonstrate the entire corrupt system to everyone." "The drives?" In fact, Tom laughed, but it was a funny laugh. "Do you really believe that I wouldn't have backup plans and would simply leave something that delicate in storage, Carson? Then, where?" Carson's gaze flitted through the shadows, attempting to follow Tom's path. The true drives are where? Tom said, just where they've always been. No one would think to search in that one spot. When you arrived here tonight, you passed by this one spot. Carson's expression changed from bewilderment to comprehension. His gaze strayed to the bar and the concealed room where Tom stored his surveillance feeds. Son of a, but Tom was on the move already. He knocked the knife away with his first blow. The nerve cluster in Carson's shoulder was the focus of his second. The gang leader fell limp to his side as his arm turned numb. 7 years, Tom replied softly as he moved forward with deliberate strides. I've been keeping this place up for 7 years. Created something honest and clean. His subsequent blow knocked Carson off his feet. And you arrived at my door with war. Despite striking the ground with force, Carson was able to roll aside and draw another blade from his vest. Ghost, there was always going to be war. Do you honestly believe you can simply leave? That you would be allowed to preserve their secrets? What are their secrets? Now Tom's laugh was icy. You still don't get it, Carson. I was never privy to their secrets. He dodged Carson's frantic cut, moving like vapor. Yours was mine. The eyes of the gang leader grew wide. What? Tom circled back to emphasize that Martinez had done more than just document the agency's malfeasance. He recorded the depravity of everyone, including you. The agreements you reached. You sold out of the operators. His tone became stern. The innocent individuals who perished as a result of your avarice. Anger twisted Carson's face. You're telling lies. Am I? Tom disarmed Carson with clinical accuracy, his action almost casual as he caught his wrist. Why do you suppose I was never pursued? Why do you suppose they allowed me to vanish? His voice trailed off to a whisper as he drew closer. For I am not the one that the urges would reveal. Yes, you are. Carson felt the reality as if it were a physical blow. No. Martinez stated. Tom interrupted. Martinez told you what you wanted to hear, gave you the impression that you were a part of a large-scale conspiracy. But Carson, you were just another piece. He could exploit the promise of a secret knowledge to influence another helpful fool. The phone crackled to life on Carson's end. The effects of the EMP fade. The static was broken by a terrified voice. Master. We're in trouble, boss. Feds at school. Many of them. It was awful to see Tom smiling. You believe that I wouldn't have backup plans for Sophia? That no one would be observing her? Shielded her? He stepped back and let go of Carson's wrist. Like I mentioned. Plan A was always successful. The defeat that was growing across Carson's face was captured by the red emergency light. The knowledge that he had been outwitted at every stage. But suddenly his face changed. Went savage. Perhaps. I can still cause you to bleed, though. Tom's blood ran cold when his hand came out of his vest with something in it. A detonator. Dead man's switch, growled Carson. When you let it go, charges start to fly about town. Including your priceless bar. He grinned viciously. We'll see how many secrets make it through that. Tension caused the time to stretch like wire. All set to snap. Then Tom took a really unexpected action. He chuckled. Why is it so funny? With his fingers clenched on the detonator, Carson demanded. The fact that you continue to believe that you are in control, Tom said. That the type of man you're dealing with is still a mystery to you. Thomas Holloway was getting ready to demonstrate why the Stillwater Kid had been the most dreaded agent in the Southwest in the red-tinted darkness of the Lucky Strike saloon. Tom, apparently indifferent to the detonator, circled Carson, his slow steps echoing in the red-lit gloom. He said in a casual tone, let me tell you about dead man switches, difficult things. Particularly the low-cost Chinese knockoffs that are already available on the illicit market. Carson's finger gripped the trigger more tightly. We all go up with one more step. No, Tom said plainly. We don't. Since it isn't a detonator. Not anymore, anyway. He pointed to the EMP device that he had already activated. They have the tendency to destroy inexpensive electronic components, such as the firing circuits of makeshift detonators, as a side consequence of localized electromagnetic pulses. Carson looked at the gadget in his palm, and a look of uncertainty crossed his face. Tom used his advantage. You want to know what's really fascinating, though? He moved closer. I anticipated that you would try something similar. Because you did precisely that in Paraguay. Carson felt the memories as if it were a physical blow. How did you? You know. Decades of experience were evident in Tom's voice. Since I witnessed your attempt to wire Martinez's office. He supplied you false information about government plots while he watched you make the accusations. His eyes became stony. I saw you kill 3 competent operators when they approached the truth too closely. Carson's calmness wavered a bit. Everything was going to be revealed. No, Tom said gently. You were about to be exposed. Your agreements with the cartels. You sold the intelligence. While posing as a patriot, you collected blood money. Carson's hand shook slightly as the detonator moved. New sirens sounded outside. A different pitch. Separate organization. Federal response units. Tom whispered, they're here for you, Carson, after 7 years of waiting. Observing. Constructing their argument. He pointed to the secret section of the bar. All of the evidence Martinez gathered. Each and every purchase you made. You betrayed every operator. Everything was recorded. Everything was kept intact. Carson's voice broke, liar. Those documents were destroyed by Martinez. I saw him burn them. Tom said, you saw him burn copies. Because Martinez did just that. Played both sides. Everyone continued to dance to his music. His tone became softer. That is, until he erred by frightening a helpless girl. His own daughter. Carson's expression of dawning realization was captured by the red emergency light. You didn't take her to keep her safe from me, Sophia. No, Tom concurred. To shield her from the reality of her father, I abducted her. Allowed her to live a typical life. His gaze locked with Carson's. Sarah and I attempted to have the same opportunity. Violence was brought to our doorstep by individuals such as yourself. There was a hint of hysteria in Carson's laugh. And now? What occurs when Sophia discovers that the man who killed her father is also her guardian angel? She is aware already. From the shadowed doorway came the new voice. Sophia Martinez entered the red-tinted illumination. Tears were streaming down her cheeks, yet her youthful face remained composed. Martha Williams stood behind her, a protective hand resting on her shoulder. Hi, Uncle Marcus, Sophia murmured. Carson's expression turned white. Save it, Sophia, she interrupted. It's been 2 years since I discovered the truth. Regarding my father's actions. What you assisted him with. She raised her voice. And what Tom did to keep me safe from you too. Tom was still standing. However, he had changed his position slightly. All set to snare any approach to the female. Carson, it's your decision. But Sophia doesn't get involved in whatever you decide. In Carson's grasp, the detonator was now obviously shaking. It wasn't. We weren't. He was at a loss for words. The system was dishonest. We were simply taking advantage of. Sophia's voice was like a whip cracking. Profitably selling out decent people. Did you tell yourself that when you assisted my father in betraying his own unit? Carson completely lost his cool. Please, Sophia. You're not understanding. Everything makes sense, she said icily. That's what Tom made sure of. When I was old enough, they showed me the proof. Let me decide for myself what to do with the truth. Her eyes pierced Carson, just like her father's. You and my father never did that much. At this point, the federal sirens were very near. There was a gentle authority in Tom's voice. Carson, it's over. The switch on the deceased man didn't work. Sophia is secure. Your men are being held. He stepped forward one more. The only question is whether you will have the remaining dignity to face what lies ahead. A quick range of emotions passed across Carson's face. Denial. Fury. Fear. And lastly, a horrible determination. No, he muttered. No, it's not finished yet. Because, Ghost, you forgot something. He reached for his vest with his free hand. Paraguay also taught me. It was not another detonator that he produced. It was a military-grade satellite phone with EMP protection. It was dialing already. Carson's smile was a horrible sight, full of contingency plans. It's not just you who had them. The phone was held up to his ear. Run Protocol Black. Tom made a blindingly fast move, but it was too late. The command phrase had already been uttered by Carson. And fresh players were going to join the game somewhere in the growing darkness. You wish to keep the truth from her. Outside, many cars screeched to a stop, and Carson laughed. The truth just knocked on your door, Ghost. Sophia rushed forward Martha as heavy boots thundered on the wooden porch. Even Carson paused at the weight of confidence in Tom's words. Marcus, you really ought to have learned from Paraguay what happens when you bring the wars of others to me. The saloon doors flew wide, letting glaring white light fill the space. As secrets and shadows clashed, Thomas Holloway was ready to demonstrate why certain legends are better left untold. With their equipment identifying them as private military contractors rather than government officers, the tactical squad that broke into the Lucky Strike operated with expert precision. 8 fully outfitted operators moving in a rehearsed stack arrangement. They were recognized by their patches as Chimera Security Solutions, one of the businesses Martinez had hacked 7 years prior. With cool authority, Tom's voice broke through the confusion. Martha. Secondary exit. Right now. Tom refused to back down as Martha led Sophia to the secret door in the kitchen. Although he appeared to be in a relaxing position, his eyes were tracking every aspect and movement, classifying hazards with the rapidity of much expertise. Holloway, Thomas. Through his tactical mask, the team leader's voice was digitally altered. You're a difficult man to locate. Apparently not hard enough. Tom's weight had moved to the balls of his feet, but his hands were still there, unthreatening. Chimera's reach extends much beyond their purview. Those drives must contain valuable items. Now there was real amusement in Carson's laugh. Do you honestly believe that the drives were the only factor in this? In reference to Martinez's small insurance policy. He pointed to the builders. Show him. A face Tom hadn't seen in 7 years appeared as the squad leader reached up and took off his mask. He had hoped he would never see it again. James Holloway murmured softly, "Hello, brother." Like smoke, the word hung in the air. Sophia, who was standing close to the kitchen, gasped, and even Carson was taken aback by the disclosure. Jamie, Tom's eyes sparked with something old and painful, but his voice stayed calm. I should have anticipated your involvement. You followed the money every time. Pay attention to the money. James's smile was a distorted reflection of Tom's. False. When you ran, did you tell yourself that? When you chased your valuable evidence and left Sarah to die? Tom's voice remained calm despite the charge hitting him like a physical blow. We both know it didn't happen that way. No. With his team maintaining ideal coverage angles, James took a step ahead. Because I have a distinct memory of that night. Do you recall receiving the call informing you of my sister-in-law's passing? That rather than defending his own wife, my brother, the well-known Stillwater Kid, had vanished with secret intelligence. Tom's voice now carried a warning, Jamie. This is not what you want to do here. Why not? James opened his arms. Ideal location for it. While the world burned, you played bartender and hid here for 7 years. Good operators perished as a result of your refusal to divulge your knowledge. Evidently taking pleasure in the family drama, Carson shifted to the side. However, Tom's focus remained fixed on his brother, observing every subtlety that could indicate deadly intent. People like you are the reason those operators died, Tom said quietly. Those who believed their financial accounts meant more than their oaths. Similar to Martinez. Similar to Carson. Oaths? James gave a sour laugh. Do you wish to discuss oaths? The oath you took to Sarah, what about it? To keep her safe. To protect her. His tone became stern. When she needed you, where was your priceless honor? More cars were pulling up outside, and local police were setting up a cordon, according to the security camera beneath the bar. However, as two brothers confronted one another after 7 years of suffering and treachery, time appeared to stop inside the fortunate stroke. At last, Tom said, "You're right. Sarah was let down by me. Didn't recognize the threat until it was too late." He looked into his brother's eyes. "In the same way that I didn't see what you had become. What you had become because of Martinez." James's calmness wavered a little. Martinez? Do you believe Martinez was involved in this? Was it not? There was quiet confidence in Tom's voice. Did he not recruit you? He was feeding you the same lies he gave Carson about business payoffs and government plots while I was managing operations. He revealed the truth to me. James's professional manner continued to deteriorate. Showed me the true actions of the agencies. The agreements they reached. The individuals they gave up. No. Tom interrupted him. He gave you the view you want. As he demonstrated to Carson. He corrupted everyone, just as he demonstrated. His tone grew softer. And he used Sarah to hide his escape when everything collapsed in Paraguay and his own greed finally got the better of him. Like a cloud of thunder, the knowledge hovered in the air. As he glanced between the brothers, Carson's smile wavered. That's not true, James said. But there was a hint of doubt in his voice. Is it? Still observing from the kitchen doorway, Tom motioned to Sophia. Consult your niece. Inquire about her father's proof. Regarding the directives he issued the night Sarah passed away. The anxiety was obviously audible in Sophia's voice. Uncle James, he's telling the truth. I've witnessed the evidence. My dad. He made use of everyone. Even you. James gripped his weapon tighter. You don't get it, Sophia. Tom interrupted, she understands perfectly. Because, in contrast to us, she decided to confront her father's reality. About the true nature of things. He fixed his gaze on his brothers. This was never about plots, drives, or evidence. Martinez wanted to make sure he had the right pawns in place for this particular situation. As the ramifications set in, Carson's face had turned pale. No, he wouldn't. Wouldn't it? Tom's voice contained the wisdom of 7 years of experience. He would use his own daughter as bait, wouldn't he? Wouldn't he use his own supporters to gain influence? When the last play was made, wouldn't he make arrangements for everyone who knew his secrets to be in one location? After receiving a text message, Carson's satellite phone began to beep. His face lost all of its color as he read it. What is it? James made a demand. As Carson read, his voice trembled a little. Protocol Black verified. Every asset is in place. Complete the last contingency. It has a signature. It has a signature. By Martinez. Silently, Tom concluded. Because, Jamie, he's not dead. He has been waiting. Making plans. He's setting up his endgame by using all of us. Like a shroud, the truth descended upon the room. However, Sheriff Davidson's voice roared from outside before anyone could reply. Please advise all units. Numerous armed contacts are coming from every direction. We don't own them. Do it again. Our location is being approached by several hostile forces. With deadly conviction, Tom's voice broke through the escalating tumult. Little brother, this is your last opportunity. Because whoever is on your side won't matter to what comes through that door next. As James Holloway had to make the most difficult decision of his life, the sounds of oncoming cars became more audible. Have faith in the sibling he had accused for 7 years. Or the one who had betrayed his own family. And Thomas Holloway readied himself to defend his house one final time in the encroaching storm. Regardless of the price. From the rooftops came the first gunfire. Sheriff Davidson's deputies were forced to seek cover due to precise bursts of suppressing fire. The way Martinez's men moved was expert. Advancing on the lucky blow from several directions and creating overlapping fields of fire. On Main Street, 3 technical vehicles. Through the radio Tom had hidden under the bar, Davidson's voice crackled. 20 hostiles or more. Military equipment and instruction. Tom walked to the windows, his thoughts calculating angles and possibilities. Start the avalanche protocol, Robert. Code of Authorization Sierra 7 Delta. Very true, Davidson said. Suddenly, all of the streetlights in the downtown area went out. Tom's long-planned contingency again. Worked in tandem with the local police force. James gazed at his sibling. You let the sheriff down. No. Quietly, Tom answered. I had faith in him. Something to think about, perhaps. He looked across at Carson. Everyone in this building will be destroyed by Martinez's soldiers. No loose ends. The first genuine terror of the evening appeared on Carson's face. You're telling lies. I belong to him. A resource? Tom interrupted him. As I was? As Jamie was? Like all those who assisted him in establishing his network? He pointed to the advancing troops. Examine their deployment strategy. No one is being extracted by them. James walked over to the window. Tom's view is confirmed by his tactical training. Jesus. They are preparing for a decisive victory. You're getting it now. Decades of experience were evident in Tom's voice. Martinez has never left any witnesses. He looked at Sophia. It's your turn, child. Sophia gave a nod. Her youthful face was a battle of fear and will. She took her phone out. Years ago, Tom had given her a special model. Carrying a highly specialized program and being hardened against EMP. You don't mean to take her seriously? James objected. I'm already involved, Sophia said, sweeping her fingertips across the screen. I have been since 2 years ago, when Tom revealed the truth to me. Why did I insist on enrolling in advanced computer science, in your opinion? The night was shook by the first explosion, and then by 2 more in quick succession. Tom's actual insurance policy, which had been meticulously organized, exploded beneath Martinez's cars, transforming them into burning obstacles. As his brother gaped in disbelief, Tom described the avalanche protocol. Modeled after Sarah's preferred ski area. Irony was always appreciated by her. His tone became stern. For years, Sophia has assisted me in modernizing the town's infrastructure. Every electrical junction, every security camera, and every traffic light. Everything is prepared at this very moment. Tom's movement was fluidly smooth, but Carson grabbed for Sophia's phone. The gang leader's arm was locked behind his back and he was face down on the bar. You assist Martinez in setting this up, Tom muttered. It's your turn to help us put an end to it. Uncertain, James raised his weapon. Tom. Tom said, "Select little brother," with complete conviction. "Because the men will be entering through that door in about 30 seconds. And when they do, our only option is family." Boots on wooden planks became more audible. Outside, Sophia's real-time reports via the town's camera network had allowed Davidson's deputies to situate themselves in the darkness. "For what length of time?" James inquired about his choice. "How much time have you spent organizing this?" 7 years, said Tom, tying Carson up with zip ties. "Ever since Martinez covered his escape by claiming Sarah was dead." His eyes met James's, and ever then I understood he had turned my own brother against me. Since then, I've vowed to be prepared the next time. Sophia moved her fingers across the screen of her phone. 12 hostiles are seen arriving from the front, 8 from behind, and 4 more keeping watch from nearby buildings, according to the surveillance network. James stated that Martinez was in his usual kill team configuration, shifting to protect the rear entry. "His playbook hasn't changed." "No," Tom said, looking at his gun. "He hasn't. This is why it will be successful." He looked at his brother. "Do the members of your team work for you or for the money?" James spoke without hesitation, "Me." "They are unaware of Martinez's affiliation. All they're doing is carrying out their obligation." "Excellent." Tom's tone changed to one of command. Formerly the voice of the leader of elite operations. "Turn off the electricity for the entire block, Sophia. Go behind the bar, Martha. Have your men guard the kitchen exit, Jamie." He stopped and turned to face his brother. "Similar to Pakistan. Do you recall?" James's lips formed a ghostly smile. "The Protocol of Baghdad?" Tom confirmed, with changes. "Martinez is familiar with our prior strategy. It's time to teach him some new skills." Just as Sophia turned off the block's electricity, the first breaching charge exploded against the front door. Tom's words rang out in the unexpected darkness. "Greetings from my house, old friend. See if you can recall the house rules." It was almost time for the fight for the Lucky Strike saloon. 2 brothers would either find atonement or join the ghosts of their past in the desert night amid the ensuing pandemonium. Martinez's team broke out from several points, and the Lucky Strike broke out in controlled mayhem. Tom's years of training combined with his deep familiarity with every inch of his bar made him move like a ghost in the shadows. Precise blows dropped the first 2 attackers silently before they could escape the entryway. James yelled, "Contact rear," and his men fired back with discipline as the hostiles attempted to enter the kitchen. Despite being apart for 7 years, the brothers settled into their old rhythms and moved in perfect unison. "Status, Sophia?" Over the shooting, Tom's voice could be heard. From her protective position behind the reinforced bar, she said, "Sheriff's teams are in position. Martinez's second wave is shown to be holding back on surveillance. They have something to wait for. Or someone," Tom affirmed, using a classic combo to drop another hostile. "Do you sense it, Jamie?" "Yes," James said, examining patterns with a tactical mind. "They are causing us harm, this is not merely a sweep operation." Still protected, Carson chuckled sourly from behind cover. "You finally worked it out. What makes you believe that he wanted everyone present?" "His favorite pawns, the Holloway brothers, are all together." Tom then employed a fluid combo known as Pure Stillwater Kid to disable one assailant and use him as a shield against his colleagues. "I'd like to watch," Martinez murmured softly. His dramatic moments were always loved. Sophia, watching her monitoring feed, reported seeing movement on the roof. "Are several teams shifting positions or retreating?" Tom clarified that they weren't retreating. "Creating space." Now Martha struck the UV lamps. When Martha pressed a concealed switch, the saloon's ultraviolet lights burst into life. Tom's meticulously planned kill zones, angles, and ranges were suddenly revealed by the glowing invisible markings he had painted years earlier. "You marked the entire location?" Despite his own admiration, James inquired. "Every inch," Tom said. Planning escape routes, establishing fire fields, and figuring out ricochet angles took 7 years of preparation. There was grim satisfaction in his voice. "Greetings from my home." Something more was exposed by the UV lights. The saloon's very design incorporates defensive positions. Concealed in plain view. Bulletproof panels were hidden below what appeared to be ornamental woodwork. Support roles also served as cover jobs. Tom said into his radio, "Sheriff Davidson. How is Quicksilver doing?" "Ready on your mark," said Davidson. "But are you certain about this, Tom? You own it." Tom whispered, "It was never about the place, Robert, was about the individuals within it." He looked at his brother. "Do you recall Fallujah, Jamie? The gold shop on the street?" James's gaze expanded. "You're not being serious." "Dead serious," Tom said. "Quicksilver, start the protocol, Sophia." The code of authorization is Sarah's wings. The saloon sprinkler system abruptly activated as Sophia's fingertips skimmed across her phone's screen. The air was filled with a thin mist of metallic particles instead of water, which caught the UV rays and produced a confusing haze. Tom clarified, "Aluminum powder," as Martinez's men paused at the door. Although non-toxic, it interferes greatly with night vision equipment. And James finished the idea when combined with the appropriate catalyst. It turns into a flashbang that is directed. "You made your entire bar into a weapon, Jesus, Tom." "No," Tom clarified. "I made it as a trap for a single person." He looked into his brother's eyes. "Martinez isn't merely here to tie things up. He has no choice but to come. Because I stole something from him 7 years ago that was worth more than any intelligence." Sophia, James thought. Tom confirmed that she was his own daughter. The only one who could confirm his involvement in all the illegal businesses he established. He could never get rid of the one witness without coming under suspicion. Carson fought against his limitations. "You're telling lies." He desired to keep her safe. "He made me watch her for all these years for that reason. He needed to know where she was when the time came, so he had you keep an eye on her." Tom answered. "His urge for you to bring James here is similar. In the same way that he needed all of his secrets in one location." Ghostly patterns were formed in the air as the metallic mist swirled in the UV light. Martinez's troops had formed a full perimeter outside, but they were not moving forward. "He's coming," Sophia said in a strained voice. "A convoy of 3 cars is coming from the east. The lead vehicle is a late-model SUV with armor." Tom looked at his weapon and saw that it was lacking in practice. "Last chance, Jamie. There is no middle ground once this begins. You're either with him or with me." For the first time in 7 years, James gave his brother a serious look. Nor the ghost, nor the legend. Only his older brother, who had trained for 7 years to defend not only Sophia but also everyone Martinez had deceived and exploited. James murmured softly, "Sarah." Was the command actually given by Martinez? Indeed. Now Tom's voice was soft. "However, you were unaware. He ensured that. As he had intended, he used her death to drive us apart." Sophia's hold on her phone tightened as the sound of the convoy's motors increased. "Dad is present." His brother's shoulder was touched by Tom's hand. "Jamie, family stands together." Sarah used to say that all the time. 7 years of patience, preparation, and waiting for this very time were all in his voice. And what will it be? Outside the fortuitous strike, the armored SUV came to a stop. 2 brothers stood prepared to confront the mastermind behind their family's devastation in the whirling metallic mist lit by ultraviolet light. James Holloway made his decision then and there. Firmly, he said, together. The family is united. After 7 years of preparation, Victor Martinez entered the saloon as the doors opened. Victor Martinez was still quite young. As his old commander stepped through the whirling mist of metal, that was the first thing that came to mind for Tom. He appeared more like a corporate executive than a trader who had sold out his own unit after 7 years of lurking and planning events from the shadows. Thomas Martinez has a pleasant, sincere smile. The well-known Stillwater child, bartending in a remote desert. Its poetry is something I must admire. He glanced around the room, taking in the metallic haze, the defenders in their positions, and the UV-lit kill zones. However, it appears that you are still adept in tactical planning. Tom's gun was still aimed at Martinez's chest. Hands that are visible to me. As in the past. The past? Martinez chuckled quietly. My best operator was when? When did I entrust the most delicate duties to you? His grin dimmed a bit. When were you a family? Family? Like a whip, James's voice cracked. You took advantage of us. Every one of us. Martinez seemed almost fatherly as he turned to face the younger Holloway brother. James. I pondered whether Tom would discover the solution. I made sure you would be present for this, in case he realized. He extended his hands. What would a family reunion be without the entire family, after all? To you, that's what this is. From behind the bar, Sophia's voice could be heard clearly. Family. Martinez became a little less composed for the first time. Sophia. Me hija. Don't. She interrupted him. Don't act like this is a family matter. Not after what I saw from Tom. Your actions toward your own unit. To Sarah. To all those who have faith in you. Martinez took another step forward, his actions captured by the metallic mist. His guys stood in position behind him. Ready but not firing weapons. Awaiting. What did Tom show you? Now there was real rage in Martinez's voice. Do you mean the meticulously chosen evidence that he used to discredit me in front of my own daughter? The same daughter I've been guarding for 7 years? Defending? There was no humor in Tom's laugh. What do you call that? Arranging for Carson to keep an eye on her. Making sure you were aware of her precise whereabouts in case you needed leverage. Martinez smiled again, but this time it was colder. Come on, Thomas. After all, you of all people ought to be aware of the necessity of backup plans. He pointed to the kill zones that were indicated with UV. You've been training for this moment for 7 years. The difference is that I was getting ready to protect her, Tom said quietly. You were planning to take advantage of her. The same way you used James. Similar to how you used Sarah. Martinez felt the name strike him like a blow to the body. Something darker was visible beneath his corporate facade for a brief period. Sarah was a bad girl. An essential. A need? James's finger gripped his trigger more tightly. She was Tom's spouse. My sister-in-law. She was a liability, said Martinez icily. One that endangered what we had constructed. The links, the networks, the power we had amassed. He fixed his gaze on Tom's. She also began looking through bank records once she began to ask questions. You issued the directive. Tom's voice was deadly quiet as he concluded. To make it appear like a random home invasion, you used one of your cartel contacts. All to ensure the safety of your business. Martinez's hands were extended wide. Thomas, the needs of many. The larger good. Remember, that's what we fought for. For what we killed. No, said Tom. You said that's what we were fighting for. What you did to defend the sale of your own people. His tone became stern. But you're not here for that, are you? Tell me. Martinez's smile was piercing. "You're here because last month was Sophia's 18th birthday," Tom stated softly. "Since she can now legally access her trust fund. The one where you have spent the last 10 years concealing your actual operational funds." The revelation hovered like smoke amid the metallic haze. As comprehension dawned, Carson's eyes grew wide. "The true target was never the drives," Tom added. "You used them as a pretext to get rid of everyone. Should finish up any loose ends before Sophia gets access to those accounts and reveals all." Now Martinez's chuckle was real. "Excellent, Thomas. You were always my best student," he said. And his soldiers moved into positions of fire. "However, you made a critical error." "Did I?" There was complete conviction in Tom's voice. Martinez answered, "You thought I came here to kill her, when my daughter's protection is my top priority. To reveal the truth to her about the man who has been mentally abusing her for 7 years." Sophia's voice broke the tense silence. "What do you mean by poisoning Uncle James to harm his own brother? Did you use Sarah's passing to separate them?" "Strange alliances are made in politics," Martinez shrugged. "After his brother left him, James sought guidance. I just offered encouragement. Inspiration." James's angry voice trembled. "You used my sorrow and my rage. Gave me the impression that Tom had put his own wife's safety ahead of confidential intelligence." Martinez grinned, "And you believed it because you secretly desired to. Wanted an excuse to despise the ideal older brother who always acted morally." He looked back at Tom. "However, it's time to complete the work we began in Paraguay. It's time to reveal Sophia's true guardian angel." As Martinez reached gently into his jacket, the metallic mist swirled. However, Tom's voice abruptly halted him. "First, look at your phone." Martinez stopped. "What?" "Your phone," Tom said again. "The one that is linked to your personal accounts. Sophia has been silently emptying it for the past hour while you talked incoherently about treachery and family." As Martinez took out his phone, genuine terror appeared on his face for the first time. As he read the screen, his features lost color. "How?" he muttered. 7 years, said Tom softly. "I taught Sophia everything I know about electronic warfare over the course of 7 years. About monitoring financial transactions. About tracking financial tracks." It was awful to see his smile. "The same thing Sarah taught me before you killed her." Finally, the truth struck Martinez like a ton of bricks. "She was, Sarah," Tom concluded, "a forensic accountant. The greatest in the industry. As well as all she discovered. Everything she recorded regarding your procedure. While you were preoccupied with the drives, Sophia was deconstructing your empire piece by piece using that knowledge." Martinez's facade of composure fell apart. "Murder them." He let out a yell. "Take them all out." However, the Stillwater Kid was already in motion in the whirling metallic mist that was lit by ultraviolet light. And he wasn't by himself this time. As Martinez's soldiers opened fire, the metallic mist turned into a violent storm. Tom's early shots dropped 2 opponents before they could properly aim, and he moved with fluid grace. James's muscle memory from many joint movements took control, and he flawlessly matched his brother's beat. "Kill the UV, Sophia." As he moved to his next position, Tom called out. The lights abruptly went out, leaving the saloon in complete darkness with the exception of muzzle flashes. Just minutes before, the boys had converted to night vision. Martinez had not foreseen another aspect of the scheme. "You're encircled." Behind his soldiers, Martinez yelled. "There's no escape." Tom said, "That's where you're wrong," in a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "For 7 years, there was never a way out." Another accurate shot, another assailant eliminated. This was where it was always going to end. As they maintained overlapping fields of fire, James's crew had moved to support positions, demonstrating their tactical expertise. After working his way out of his constraints, Carson made the decision to dive behind the bar with Sophia rather than sprint to Martinez. With her eyes on the tactical display on her phone, Sophia reported that they were moving to seal the kitchen. Two groups, pincer motion. James yelled, adding another insult, just like Paraguay. He was always unable to withstand the traditional flanking move. Tom's voice was authoritative. Phase 3, Sheriff. Davidson's reaction was prompt. At the same time, flashbangs exploded outside each window, and then his deputy fired accurate bullets. The outer containment squad led by Martinez was trapped in their own kill zone. "Victor, you've lost your empire." Tom's voice broke the commotion. All the accounts were drained. All the safe houses were destroyed by fire. All of the contacts were made public. He emerged from the fog long enough to kill another assailant. The irony would have pleased Sarah. "Your own daughter is destroying everything you've created with her money tracking techniques." There was now a hint of craziness in Martinez's laugh. "Do you believe that this was solely for money? The accounts? The contacts?" Despite increasing casualties, his forces continued to advance. "Beyond all of it, I created something greater. Something that cannot be destroyed by just shifting a few numbers." Sophia's voice was clear, though. "On the foundation of deception, treachery, and murder, you constructed a house of cards." She ran her fingertips across the screen of her phone. "And I simply forwarded all of the proof to the nation's media outlets and law enforcement." Martinez felt the realization as if it were a bodily blow. "Your own father, my father passed away 7 years ago, wouldn't you?" Sophia gave a chilly response. "When he covered up his crimes by ordering the death of an innocent woman. The man who reared me. Taught me to confront the reality, no matter how unpleasant, and protected me." She lowered her voice. "Tom was that person." The voice of James joined in. "The one who demonstrated to me the misuse of my own sorrow and rage. My brother was that person." Carson even raised his voice from behind the bar. "The man who offered others a second opportunity. Who didn't merely take, but actually built something. Martha passed him the shotgun, and he chambered it. You believed you could break that bartender." Eventually, Martinez lost all control. "Take them out. Take them all out. This place should be burned down." However, Tom's voice pierced the chaos with lethal assurance. "Martha. Right now." During the conflict, the metallic mist that had been gradually settling ignited. Not in a lethal blast. However, a spectacular chemical reaction produced a blinding amount of light in the saloon. Martinez's soldiers, who were already having trouble with the changing visibility, were totally lost. Through the confusion, Tom and James moved like twin shadows. The home field advantage, which Tom had spent 7 years honing, enhanced their years of training. Every shot made its target. Every motion was fluid like water. When the brothers Holloway were reunited, it was clear why they had been the Southwest's most feared operations team. As Martinez's soldiers fell, Tom said, "It's over, Victor. Your team is not working. You won't have a backup. You've lost your money." The light display faded and he came out. His old leader had received weapon training. "It's time to confront what you have created." Martinez was now by himself. His business persona has vanished entirely. Something wild took its place. In a desperate situation. Do you think this is the end of it? Within your tiny saloon? In your pitiful endeavor to lead a normal life? He reached for his jacket. "Everything, Thomas, I had prepared for." The gadget he produced chilled Tom to the bone. A military-grade dead man's switch that was linked to something much more significant than Carson's makeshift arrangement. 7 years, cried Martinez. I spent 7 years expanding my network. Do you believe I wasn't ready for this? That I was lacking a definitive answer. For the first time, there was genuine dread in Sophia's voice. Dad. Know the costs of destruction. They remain in place all across downtown. You're correct, Majija. It was awful to see Martinez's smile. Daddy's final explanation of how the real world functions. On the consequences of betraying family members. The entire scene was visible after the metallic mist had finally subsided. Martinez, holding his switch. James and Tom are prepared with their firearms. Behind the bar, Sophia and Carson. The rear exit is covered by Martha. This is the culmination of 7 years of patience, planning, and preparation. Amidst the abrupt quiet, Thomas Holloway readied himself to make a final decision between mercy and justice. Between revenge and atonement. In between the man he had become and the ghost he had been. Because not all legends end in death. They conclude with a decision. In Martinez's hands, the deceased man's switch shone dutifully. He felt the trigger with a white-knuckled thumb. After 7 years of meticulous planning, everything had fallen apart. He had one final card to play, though. Thomas, you know what's funny? A hint of frenzy was in Martinez's voice. You taught me this specific trick. Do you recall Damascus? The contingency plan that is actually a trap. Tom's thoughts whirled through possibilities, figuring out angles and results. There was more to the demolition charges than just a threat. Martinez tried to leave a legacy with them. One last destructive deed to demonstrate his strength. With caution, Tom stated those charges. Are they not limited to the buildings? The foundation points contain them. The structures that support the weight. Martinez grinned broadly. Excellent. After all these years, still sharp. Redrock Hollow in downtown descends into the old mine shafts beneath the streets with a single push of this button. Madness sparkled in his eyes. A deserted town coming back to life. You think it's poetic? James moved slightly in an attempt to improve his perspective. You're crazy. Those buildings are occupied by civilians. Martinez shrugged, losses are acceptable. The same as Sarah. The same as Sophia's mom. Like everyone who ever had faith in me. He touched the trigger with his thumb. Can the well-known Stillwater Kid drop me before I release this switch? That's the only question. Tom's tone did not waver. Victor, you're not just leaving. This is going to end tonight, one way or another. But how many others pass away beside me? Martinez contested. For your retaliation, how many lives are you prepared to give up? For your own fairness? He laughed bitterly. Thomas, are you still attempting to be the hero? No. Sophia's voice broke the tense silence. With her phone in her hand like a weapon, she rose from behind the bar. He's making an effort to be a decent man. You never understood it. Martinez's gaze grew strained. Go back down, Sophia. The charges, she added, tracing her fingers across her screen. Their detonation method is wireless. Still digital, but military grade. She raised her gaze to her dad. Did you honestly believe that Tom wouldn't instruct me on how to dispose of explosive ordnance? What about electronic countermeasures? Martinez's face flashed with genuine dread for the first time. You are unable to. The encryption. Was it inspired by your previous military codes? Sophia concluded. In Paraguay, you utilized those. Tom made sure I committed those to memory as a precaution. She looked into her father's eyes. For the last hour, I have been breaking down your network. Shutting down the charges was merely another node. There was a gentle pride in Tom's voice. Child, you would have been loved by Sarah. She feels the same way about systems as you do. Martinez became even less composed. You're playing a bluff. The safety precautions have already been disabled. James continued, comprehending dawning. Tom, wasn't it the true purpose of the metallic mist? Not only coverage of tactics. It carried a wireless signal dampening field. Insurance, Tom said. In case Sophia required additional time for her task. He never took his eyes from Martinez's chest. Victor, it's over. It's really over. However, Martinez's thumb remained above the switch. Perhaps. Perhaps not. Do you want to wager all these lives on your young daughter's computer prowess? On the loyalty of your brother? Can you drop me before I set off this trigger on your own? No, a fresh voice spoke up. From behind the bar, Carson emerged. Martinez was under shotgun training. He is placing a wager on redemption. There was real astonishment in Martinez's laugh. Marcus? You as well. 7 years, said Carson calmly. I saw Sophia grow up for 7 years. Here, I saw Tom construct something tangible. Began to see what true loyalty looked like. He gripped the weapon tighter. I began to recall who I was before you reduced me to the status of an attack dog. Something lethal formed from the tension in the room. Martinez was now by himself. Surrounded by those he had deceived and controlled. The trigger he touched may or may not still be attached to enough explosives to blow up half the town. So this is the conclusion. Martinez sounded disdainful. The ghost starts working as a bartender. The brother is transformed into a hero. The traitor is saved. And I'm put to death by my own daughter. His thumb tensed a little. Like a cheesy western. No, Tom said softly. And so it goes on. How individuals proceed. Take note of their errors. Create something superior. His tone became stern. Victor, you are the only one trapped in the past. Martinez glanced back and forth between them. The resolve of his daughter. Carson's unwavering aim. Loyalty was restored by James. And Tom's unwavering faith. 7 years of preparation. Of deceit. Of meticulously planned systems. The same people he had attempted to eliminate undid it all. Are you aware of your actual error? Tom inquired quietly. You believed that dominating individuals was equivalent to breaking them. Believed that deception and terror were more powerful than faith and atonement. And love, Sophia said. Her voice was as strong as Sarah's. Love was forgotten. A quick range of emotions flashed across Martinez's face. Fury. Fear. Desperation. And lastly, a horrible determination. Then, he growled, let's test that notion. And he started to lift his thumb off the switch. His movements were tracked by 4 weapons. Triggers made 4 fingers tight. There are 4 ways to arrive to the same conclusion. However, Thomas Holloway took one last decision in that moment of time when justice and retribution were on the line. And in doing so, demonstrated why legends might occasionally endure their own demise. Martinez's thumb left the switch, and time slowed to a crawl. Tom's universe became focused on one thing. Hard-earned insight combined with years of training. He was able to make the shot. All of them could. 4 distinct viewpoints. 4 kills are assured. However, that wasn't the actual option. Like a razor, Tom's speech sliced through the tension. Now Sophia. Sophia's last order came to life as Martinez's thumb cleared the trigger. The localized EMP burst she had been creating through the modified battery of her phone caused the deceased man's switch to spark and die, its circuitry totally damaged. Tom moved as soon as the switch died. To disarm, not to shoot. Martinez's hand was knocked wide by his initial strike. The detonator clattered across the floor, useless. The older man was dropped hard as his second swept his legs. Standing over his old commander, Tom murmured softly, "That's the difference between us, Victor. You consider individuals to be tools. They are folks I want to keep safe." Martinez twisted his features in anger as he attempted to stand up. "Guard. Thomas, you're still simply a murderer. It is still only a weapon. None of us are more than that." "No," James moved forward while lowering his own weapon. "You only gave us that impression of who we were. However, Tom." He gazed at his brother with fresh insight. Tom was always human. Never gave up on assisting others in returning home. Carson's moves were polished and accurate as he moved to secure Martinez. 7 years of bartending, hearing tales, and granting second chances. He was creating a community, and you were creating an empire of shadows. Sophia moved to stand next to Tom and said, "A family. An actual one." It was not a funny laugh from Martinez. "Family? Do you believe this to be that? A touching reunion?" He fixed his gaze on Tom's. "Thomas, tell them. Inform them about the actual events that took place in Paraguay. Describe to them all the corpses we left behind. About our transactions. Regarding the way you made your own daughter a failsafe." Tom cut me off. "About the way you made my brother despise me. About how my wife found out about your true business and you had her killed." Like smoke, the words hung in the air. A sequence of micro-expressions appeared across Martinez's face. Fury. Fear. And lastly, respect, perhaps. "You were the best of us all the time," he remarked softly. He was the ideal soldier, always human. The non-breakable weapon. He grinned ruthlessly. "Instead, I destroyed everything in your immediate vicinity. And that was your last error," Tom said. "Since you gave me the most valuable lesson of all. The process of rebuilding. How to assist others rebuild." Over the radio, Sheriff Davidson's voice crackled. "We have the charges secured, Tom. The EOD crew verifies that every device has been turned off. The town is secure." Martinez drooped his shoulders. He was losing the last of his resistance. Shadows and schemes for 7 years. The very individuals he had attempted to eliminate undid it. Now what? He asked abruptly, sounding worn out and elderly. Does the hero get his retribution? Does justice win out? No. Now Tom's voice was soft. You must now confront what you have created. Accept the repercussions of your decisions. Like everyone else had to. With tears streaming down her cheeks, Sophia took a step forward. Dad, goodbye. I'm hoping that some remnant of the father I remember is still there. Martinez's daughter's words caused his entire composure to break. The manipulator vanished for a minute, leaving behind a damaged man who must deal with the remnants of his legacy. In a whisper, he said, I did it for you. Everything. It was all for you. No, Sophia said quietly. It was all for you. It was Tom who took care of everything for me and taught me how to be powerful without being mean. How to confront reality without allowing it to devastate me. James took a position next to his sibling. Finally, 7 years of contrived enmity are over. Victor, that's the true meaning of family. Not command. Not coercion. Just a group of folks standing together and supporting one another's recovery. Martinez turned to face the people around him. The quiet strength of his daughter. Carson has found atonement. The brothers re-established their relationship. He had been planning for 7 years. But not to the triumph he had hoped for. Thomas, you've won, he said at last. The hero is the ghost. The narrative has a joyful ending. No, Tom said, assisting him to stand up as federal officers walked into the saloon. Not a conclusion. Just a fresh start. For us all. Tom turned to his family as Martinez was escorted away in handcuffs. In the middle of the desert, he located the one he had lost and constructed it. The sky was painted in shades of promise as the morning sun broke over the Redrock Hollow. The fees? He questioned Sophia. She wiped away her tears and grinned. Totally neutralized. Dad's use of predictable coding was unavoidable. The accounts? Marked for federal inquiry and frozen. Sarah's tracking procedures were flawless. After giving a nod, Tom faced his brother. Jamie? James slowly met his gaze. Big brother, we have a lot to discuss. Many years to compensate. Yes, Tom said. Yes, we do. First, assist me in rebuilding this place. For certain legends never die. They simply shift. Transforming into something new. A better one. Like a little town in the desert where a bartender used to sell drinks and give people second chances. And where a family discovered that the relationships we choose to create are the strongest. Federal agents crowded the Lucky Strike saloon as the morning sun rose higher over the Redrock Hollow. Tom stood amidst the wreckage of the war that night, examining the damage with an experienced eye. The floor sparkled with broken glass. The walls were pocked with bullet holes. And there was the lingering smell of the metallic mist. How awful is it? Already taking notes on her phone for insurance, Martha inquired. Tom touched the scarred top of the bar. Structures make noise. The reinforcements remained in place. Damage is mostly cosmetic. In the dawn light, his gaze followed the UV-marked kill zones. However, a new paint job will be required. After making his statement to the federal authorities, James walked over and holstered his gun. Many lives were spared tonight thanks to your planning. The accusations that Martinez made? According to EOD, they could have destroyed half of downtown. Joining them, Sheriff Davidson said, Tom's always been thorough. 7 years of preparation, fortification, and planning. I assumed he was just being paranoid the entire time. Not paranoid, Tom clarified in a low voice. All set. There is a distinction. Working close by, Sophia coordinated with government cyber specialists to find Martinez's remaining network. Piece by digital piece, she dismantled 7 years of illicit activity as her fingers moved with practiced ease across her phone's screen. All of Dad's accounts are locked down, she said. 3 agencies have already begun processing the evidence. His entire business? She hesitated as emotion finally overcame her. It's truly over. Tom took a seat beside her and put a soft touch on her shoulder. You did well, young one. Sarah would be pleased. Sarah? Sophia gave him a look. You never discuss her. No, Tom said quietly. I didn't. The agony was too new for a long time. Perhaps, though, he looked at his brother. Perhaps we should begin telling such stories. From his location close to the federal agents, Carson, who is currently in detention but is cooperating, spoke. Now what? That depends, Tom said. Depending on how much you assist them in figuring out what remains of Martinez's enterprise. Depends how you spend your second opportunity. His gaze locked with Carson's. Regarding if you recall the lessons you learned about redemption here. The saloon floor was covered in lengthy shadows as the early light poured through the smashed windows. Martha was already cleaning, moving with determination and accuracy. Despite being pounded, the fortuitous strike was not defeated. As he picked up a fallen chair, James said, "We'll help rebuild. It's the least I can do after everything." Tom accepted the offer and the implicit apologies with a nod. "Will you require it? There is a lot of work to be done." After pausing, he added quietly. "We also do." From her phone, Sophia looked up. For a semester, I can postpone going to college. Assist with the rebuilding. No, Tom answered right away. Your life isn't being placed on hold. This location is merely a structure. What matters more is your future. What about your future, though? She posed a challenge. Will you be staying? Now that everyone is aware of your true identity. The morning air was heavy with the question. They were surrounded by federal agents, recording evidence and interviewing witnesses. The town was already waking up outside. People coming out to look at the aftermath of what had happened that night. I came here looking for a place to hide 7 years ago, Tom stated cautiously. Instead, I discovered something different. He glanced about the saloon, observing the bullet holes, shattered glass, and evidence of fighting. Located a house. Discovered a family. James moved in closer. The agencies are going to want to speak with you. Regarding Paraguay. Almost anything. Tom shrugged and let them. No more secrets. The shadows are gone. He picked up a shattered glass and gave it a careful inspection. It's time to shine brightly. From behind the bar, Martha's voice could be heard. You still owe me for 7 years of below-market wages, regardless of who you are. As the room erupted in laughing, the tension subsided. The federal agents even grinned. The fortuitous hit was neither a crime scene nor a battleground at that precise instant. It was merely a bar, shabby yet intact. Similar to those who had defended it. First thing, Tom declared, putting his sleeves up. We tidy up. After that, we rebuild. Better than it was. After giving her phone a final glance, Sophia put it away. All together. Together, James said. And they cleared debris and assessed damage throughout the morning. As they collected evidence and took statements, federal agents arrived and went. People from the community began to stop by, offering assistance and bringing food and coffee. Displaying the kind of unity that can only be seen in tiny towns. Tom stopped working as the sun rose, taking in his family, the one he had lost, found, and created. At last, free from Martinez's control, at his brother. Like her stepmother, she was strong and adept at Sophia. At Martha, Sheriff Davidson, and everyone else who had sided with him. The Stillwater Kid had visited Redrock Hollow 7 years prior in search of a place to vanish. Rather, he had discovered something much more valuable. A chance to assist others in making a comeback. To reconstruct. To recall their true selves. The fortunate strike would reappear as a bar and a representation of something greater. The notion that everyone is entitled to a second opportunity. We are the ones who create that family. And that, occasionally, the best legends are the ones we create for ourselves, day by day, alongside the people we choose to call our own. The days that followed in Redrock Hollow were filled with a lot of action. In the town hall, federal officials set up a command post where they processed evidence and conducted interviews. Main Street was lined with news vans eager to learn more about the renowned agent who had worked as a bartender in the desert for 7 years. Tom meticulously rebuilt his saloon piece by piece after working through everything. Instead of being damage, the bullet holes in the walls became sources of pride. Evidence of a night when a tiny village defied corruption in one place. As she entered the half-refurbished Lucky Strike, Martha declared that she had received the contractor's estimate. Most of it will be covered by insurance. It appears that our policy covers harm resulting from federal operations. Tom was fixing floors when he looked up. Didn't you add that provision 5 years ago? 6, she smiled and corrected. Immediately following the UV lighting system's installation. Anyone that paranoid was probably getting ready for something significant. James came in the front door with materials and lumber. His tactical gear had been swapped out for work clothing, and he now resembled the brother Tom had known before Paraguay. Carson stated that the federal task force had completed his interview and put down his burden. He's giving it his all for them. Martinez's whole network, including names, dates, and accounts. Tom nodded, hammering home yet another point. The man is attempting to gain a second opportunity. Well done. With her laptop balanced on one arm, Sophia emerged from the back office. I recently concluded a video conference with the FBI's cyber division. I have an internship offer for next summer. After a moment, she added softly. They claim it was impressive that I tracked Dad's financial network. Of course it was, Tom said with a tone of pride. The best taught you. He looked away. You could have learned more about forensic accounting from Sarah. There was no longer any anguish when Sarah was mentioned, only a mild aching of memory. With comprehension in his eyes, James took a step toward his brother. James whispered, I've been thinking about her a lot lately. I was so furious over Martinez's use of her death to separate us that I was unable to see what was in front of me. Tom stood to face his brother and said, he was good at that, identifying people's vulnerabilities and taking advantage of their suffering. He pointed to the saloon. I created this space in order to assist others in rediscovering their strength. Sheriff Davidson came in with a pile of documents. The town council's emergency meeting just ended. It was decided unanimously to expedite all of your renovation permits. He smiled. It turns out that local cooperation benefits from having a legendary operative as your bartender. No longer legendary, Tom clarified. A bartender attempting to reconstruct his establishment. Martha chimed in about that. Security companies have made 17 offers to work with you as a consultant. In addition, there are 2 movie rights inquiries, 3 book deals, and a podcast network. Tom laughed with real laughter. I told the federal investigators the same thing I told them. I have retired. I now call this place home. Sophia raised her head from her computer. Federal investigators are pursuing Dad's remaining assets, speaking of which. Everything, including the shell corporations and the money he concealed abroad. There was a mixture of melancholy and resolve in her voice. Nothing of his dominion will remain when they are finished. Good, answered James decisively. Instead, it's time to construct something better. Around them the renovations went on. Volunteers from the area poured in and out, bringing supplies, food, and assistance. There was more to the Lucky Strike than just a bar. It was turning into a representation of the tenacity of the community. Tom abruptly exclaimed, I got something to show you, and he led them to the base of the bar. He indicated a recently poured concrete slab where the floor had been damaged by one of Martinez's charges. Take a closer look. Handprints were embedded in the fresh concrete. Sophia's, Martha's, Tom's, James's, and additional areas. New foundation, said Tom quietly. A fresh start for everyone. With tears in her eyes, Sophia bent down to touch the concrete. Family, she said softly. Family, James said, covering his print with his palm. They heard a disturbance at the door. There stood a bunch of the villagers, including Henry Cooper, the saloon's oldest frequent client. I heard you're rebuilding, the elderly man said. I thought you would need some assistance. Dozens more villagers waited behind him, carrying supplies and tools. This house is more than simply your home, after all. Tom turned to face the assembled gathering. Together, ranchers, educators, mechanics, and shopkeepers are rebuilding not only a bar but the heart of a community. Well, he finally murmured, his lips quivering with a smile. Then you had better get to work. The fortunate strike began to slowly come back to life as the afternoon sun cast gold hues across the barren sky. Not as a stronghold or a hiding place, but as something much more potent. A spot where a former ghost had at last found his way home, where redemption might be sought in the company of friends, and where second chances were offered alongside cocktails. Even though the Stillwater Kid mythology was over, the tale of Redrock Hollow's guardian and bartender, Tom Holloway, was only getting started. And he wasn't alone on the path this time. The Lucky Strike saloon had hardly changed in 2 weeks following the battle. The smashed windows had been rebuilt, the scarred floor resurfaced, and the bullet holes had been plugged. However, Tom had insisted on preserving some of that night's evidence. The UV-reactive paint was still there, but it now had a new meaning. After going over her checklist, Martha declared that the final inspections will take place tomorrow. The fire marshal, the health department, etc. However, I see that our FBI buddies did some ingenious paperwork to expedite the process. From behind the recently refurbished bar, where he was carefully arranging his bottles, Tom nodded. The agency's method of expressing gratitude for Martinez, the network, and everything else. Sophia sat at the bar with a number of intricate financial documents open on her laptop. Next month is when Dad's trial is scheduled. According to federal prosecutors, Carson's testimony and the financial records are unquestionable. Her fingers lingered over the keyboard as she paused. I'm also being asked to testify. Only if you wish to, Tom muttered. There is nothing that you owe them. I understand, she said, her eyes resolute. However, I owe it to the truth and to myself. She pointed to her computer screen. In addition, someone should describe how we located and shut down his operation. The document ought to include Sarah's approaches. James came in the front door with the new sign that will be displayed outdoors. They added a subtitle that said, "Second chances are always on tap," but the name stayed the same. He put the sign down and said, I got the last of my paperwork sorted. Restored full benefits and honorable discharge. It appears that there are benefits to revealing a significant criminal plot. Martha asked, attempting to sound informal, are you planning to stay in town? His brother looked at James. Perhaps this location would benefit from additional security, preferably from an experienced individual, if space permits. The ghost of a smile touched Tom's lips as he said, may be able to arrange something. Even so, the salary isn't really good. James remarked quietly that it was never about the money. Was about coming home. Sheriff Davidson showed up carrying a large package. Received the federal task force's final reports. Martinez's network has been tracked throughout 12 nations. Everything was made clear by Carson's testimony. Corrupt authorities, sham corporations, and safe houses. Astonished, he shook his head. A man built an empire for 7 years, only to have his own daughter assist in its destruction. Sophia spoke quietly yet firmly. He believed he was protecting me for 7 years. I never realized that the truth was what I truly needed. The ability to make my own decisions. She gave Tom a look. I got that from you. Through the new windows, the afternoon sun caught the faint UV markings that now painted a tale of redemption, family, and second chances. The room felt like it had been inhabited once more as local patrons began to resume their regular positions. Davidson pulled out another document and said, I got something else. Resolution of the town council. They're giving you a key to Redrock Hollow and making you an honorary citizen. In fact, Tom laughed. No key is required. Everything I need is already here. As more residents, including Doc Miller and Henry Cooper, came, the door chimed. They brought gifts for the house. Anything from homemade desserts to rare whiskey bottles. Not merely reopening was the lucky hit. It was a rebirth. Martha pointed out that the throng had increased and urged that you say something. The man himself must speak for himself. Tom surveyed his assembled family, both blood and chosen. At last, free of old ghosts, at his brother. Strong and capable, she was blazing her own trail at Sophia. At Martha, who had supported him despite not being fully aware of his background. At the locals who had contributed to the reconstruction of not only a bar but also the center of a community. 7 years ago, he said, his voice resonating naturally in the well-known room. I came here in search of a place to vanish, fleeing my history. He pointed to the saloon that had been repaired. I discovered something better instead. Discovered individuals worth fighting for and standing by. James held up his glass. To relatives. To be honest, Sophia added. Martha added that second opportunities were important. Tom finished quietly, heading home. The thoughts were echoed by the assembled throng, whose voices blended into something strong and genuine. Inside the Lucky Strike, a legend discovered something more than fame or glory, while outside the desert sun painted the sky in shades of promise. He was at peace. With its repaired walls containing both fresh and ancient stories, the refurbished pub was alive with laughter and vitality. Tom Holloway, who was no longer the Stillwater youngster but rather someone much more significant, a bartender, a brother, a father figure, a protector, smiled at his family and started pouring drinks in the middle of it all. Because certain legends can survive without bloodshed or bullets. Sometimes all they need is a place to call home and companions. The Lucky Strike had found its new rhythm a week after the ceremonial reopening. The first influx of curious people had subsided, leaving the usual audience as well as a few newcomers who were interested in more than just the Stillwater Kid legend. While cleaning the bar top, Tom observed a group of federal agents who were not on duty conversing with local ranch hands. He expected some of the agents might stay longer, but they had stayed in town to tie up loose ends. People had a tendency to like Redrock Hollow. Martha threw a pile of papers on the bar and announced 3 more applications. It appears like everyone wants to work for the company that confronted Victor Martinez. James, from his security position by the door, suggested that they be carefully screened. Modern cameras and sensors had been installed, but they were discreet. Glory seekers and would-be vigilantes are the last thing we need. Another exposé on Martinez's collapsed empire appeared on the muted TV in the pub. On her laptop, overseeing the Foundation's initial award round, Sophia, who had just returned from Stanford orientation for the weekend, looked up. According to her, it's the largest organized criminal bust in Southwest history. However, they are still baffled by how we were able to track all of those accounts. Tom grinned a little as he recalled the late nights spent teaching Sophia the money-tracking technique Sarah had mastered. Let them ponder. It's preferable to keep some stories to yourself. Sheriff Davidson came in with a tall man dressed like a federal marshal, and the door chimed. John Parker, his former Quantico instructor and current deputy director of the Marshal Service's Fugitive Task Team, was instantly recognizable to Tom. Parker down at the bar and said, "Evening, Tom," with ease. "What a place you've created." "John, it's been a long time," Tom said, pouring his old mentor's typical bourbon neat. "Heard about the hearing for Martinez?" "In part." Parker took a grateful sip of his drink. "Wanted to see for myself as well. The myth who turned into a bartender. The ghost that made it home." He pointed to the saloon. "It fits you better than the shadows ever did, you have to admit." James joined them, his posture displaying anxiety. Prior to everything going awry, Parker had also been his teacher. The older man, however, merely grinned. "James, calm down. There is no trouble for you." He actually took out an envelope that looked professional. "There may be a chance for you. You too." Tom arched an eyebrow, believing that I had made my retirement obvious. "Oh," Parker told him, "you are. This has nothing to do with field work. It's about instructing, training, and demonstrating proper behavior to a new generation." He extended his hands. "Consulting on a part-time basis. You keep your house, your family, and your bar. Just impart a little of your acquired knowledge." A disturbance broke out close to the pool tables before either brother could reply. A contested shot had led to a brawl between 2 newcomers. Tom began to move, but Sophia moved before him. "Gentlemen." Sarah's gentle authority was still present in her voice. "At the Lucky Strike, we have a straightforward policy. Everyone has one opportunity to leave. You own this. The would-be combatants glanced at her, then at James near the entrance, and finally at Tom behind the bar. They swiftly left after settling their tab. Parker gave a low whistle. "Doesn't the apple fall close to the tree?" "No," Tom said with pride. "She is superior to all of us combined." The rhythm that Tom had come to appreciate became more comfortable as the night grew darker. While talking with Davidson about plans for expansion, Martha took care of the books. James contemplated Parker's proposition while keeping an eye on security. Sophia balanced her foundational work between learning the business and assisting consumers. "What have I just realized?" In a calm time, Sophia said. "Everyone in this room is carrying a story with them tonight. They are attempting to rewrite their own history." Tom surveyed his assembled family. Blood and chosen alike. At the life he had created from his former one's ashes. He saw the future developing in unexpected ways. "That's the reason they come here," he said quietly. "Everyone should have the opportunity to write their own finale, not for the cocktails or the legend." The promise of rain kicked up in the dusty wind outside. However, family and warmth prevailed within the fortunate hit. Instead of forgetting the past, the ghost had found peace in assisting others in confronting their own. The Lucky Strike Saloon held a special celebration a year after Martinez's collapse. It was for Sophia's first year at Stanford, not for the anniversary of that fatal night. In financial forensics, she was as good as Sarah had been. Tom watched his family assemble as he stood behind his bar. James had accepted Parker's offer, dividing his time between running the tavern security and training federal officers. His teachings on moral judgment have gained notoriety on their own. Martha put down her tablet and declared, "Final numbers are in." The expansion for Lucky Strikes was finished. There will be further locations in Rattlesnake Junction. The idea of second chances is present in community centers as well as bars. James discussed going to Carson's parole hearing, which is scheduled for next month. He has been excellent, according to the Rehabilitation Board, and he even initiated a mentoring program for other prisoners. With practiced ease, Tom mixed drinks and nodded. "Give people a chance, and they may surprise you." When Sheriff Davidson arrived with an unexpected visitor, Victor Martinez, who was being held in prison for a supervised visit, the door chimed. His plea agreement included yearly get-togethers with Sophia in an effort to mend part of their damaged connection. As her father walked up to her, Sophia stood poised and calm. "Dad. Me hija." Martinez gave a quiet response. Even though he had aged from a year in federal prison, his eyes had changed. A clarity that resulted from confronting harsh realities. "You resemble your stepmother in appearance." Tom placed a glass of water in front of his old leader and muttered, "Sarah would be proud, both of them." Martinez's eyes locked with those of his former agent. "She would. Thomas, she would also be pleased with you. Of the things you constructed here. What you built for others." He pointed to the saloon. "This location. It is everything that our last unit ought to have been. A true family. A legitimate goal." Under Sophia's leadership, the Sarah Holloway Foundation had grown and assisted hundreds of people in starting again. The repute of Lucky Strikes had also increased. It was a site where anyone could find their way home, not where the Stillwater youngster made his final stand. Tom led them to a recent addition to the memorial wall and stated, "I got something to show you." Other pictures were hung next to Sarah's. The faces of people who were redeemed at the Lucky Strike. Carson's rehabilitation certificate next to his booking photo. James with his teaching commendation in tactical gear. The first success story of Sophia's foundation is displayed next to her letter of admittance to college. Martinez noted that a wall of second chances was preferable to a wall of kills. "Always was," Tom said. "Some of us simply took longer to discover that." There were more recognized faces in the evening. Parker stopped by to share that James's training program was expanding across the country. As the town's notoriety grew, Doc Miller told stories to newcomers. Henry Cooper, who was teaching young ranch hands who came to listen to his stories, even had a new lease on life. The stars in the desert came out clear and bright as night settled over Redrock Hollow. Tom took a minute to stroll outdoors and recalled another night a year before, when legends and ghosts had fought in the shadows. With a gentle comfort, Sophia joined him. Considering the past. He made the correction while considering the future. About how the stories we tell in bars aren't always the greatest. No. She grinned. Sarah's resolve was evident as well. So what are they? Tom glanced back at his gathering family through the windows. James teaches situational awareness to Davidson's deputies. Martha is organizing the upcoming expansion. Martinez discovering his own route to atonement. Now, even the walls with UV marks conveyed a different tale. Not of strategic benefits, but of knowledge gained and insights exchanged. The best legends are the ones we live every day, he remarked gently. The minor decisions that shape who we are. The opportunities we provide for people to realize their true potential. The fortuitous strike hummed inside, full of possibilities and life. Peace was not all the ghost had discovered. He had discovered his calling. It had evolved into a better legend. A tale of family, hope, and the bravery to start over. Are you prepared to resume your work? Even though Sophia already knew the answer, she nevertheless asked. Tom grinned as he turned to face the door, his house, and the future they had all created together. Always, he said. Someone has to continue giving those second opportunities, after all. As they made their way back to their family, the promise and sage scents filled the desert wind. Redrock Hollow outside has developed into more than a little community. The lucky stroke within was still what it had always been. A beacon, not simply a bar. A place where new stories were waiting to be told and legends rested. For certain ghosts don't have to disappear. Gunfire and glory aren't the end of all legends. They can occasionally change into something far more potent. The basic fact that everyone is entitled to another opportunity, another round, or another chance to get home. That was perhaps the greatest legacy left by Tom Holloway. Not as the Stillwater child, but as a bartender who taught people that the bravery to start over was what contained the strongest spirits, not bottles. And those fresh starts would always be available at the Lucky Strike Saloon in Redrock Hollow. Forever. 2 more amazing tales await you directly on your screen in the next section. You won't want to miss these if you like this one. Simply click to view, and remember to subscribe. A lot would be at stake.
Disclaimer. This channel stands against all forms of intolerance, discrimination, racism, and violations of human rights. The stories shared here are original creations, developed to encourage reflection, understanding, and constructive dialogue. All content is produced with a commitment to respecting diversity and honoring human dignity.